rescue efforts in central Texas.
The search continues. Unfortunately, we lost about a half or three-quarter of a day yesterday to the river going up. But like I said, like y'all said, I've been assured by the governor and the president, you know, we will have the resources to get the job done.
More than 2,000 people from multiple agencies are deployed to assist in the recovery efforts, according to the Kerr County Sheriff.
And search and rescue remains our top priority. But we've moved on to also include recovery. And that's where we had the people out in the river basin doing a lot of work. We're trying to get a handle on things. So just be patient with it as we go forward.
As the community grapples with the July 4th flooding that killed more than 130 people, including 27 campers and counselors at Camp Mystic in Hunt, Texas, messages of appreciation and concerns over rebuilding continue.
I would love to have the ability to understand where businesses can look for assistance. Ourselves, we lost several $1 million in this disaster, as well as everybody else.
This tragic event has proven the greatness of humanity. Please pray for the families who were affected. Thank you for blessing Kerr County with kind hearts and love of mankind.
It has been more than a week since a victim was found alive. Nearly 150 people across the state are still missing, 140 in Kerr County alone. And during the first meeting of city officials since the floods, one council member requested the city to provide additional security for staff members citing threats, but she did not elaborate on the specific threats and asked the city to be proactive. In Kerrville, Texas, I'm Ivan Rodriguez.
Difficult images to watch. So, of course, our thoughts and prayers are with the hill country of Texas. Those images are very reminiscent on what we saw with Hurricane Helene, which are high impact areas. These are flood prone areas, mountain foothills, low-lying roads, and poor drainage areas. Do you want to get to the forecast now? We've been seeing some strong thunderstorms out there. Want to end with this live view that we have potentially over towards Monroe. You can see some strong thunderstorms out into the distance. So if you got any evening plans on this Monday night, maybe you're staying in or maybe you're headed out, just keep an eye on the sky and that radar, and we will see you guys tomorrow.
I wonder if our wasp friend is still there.
He was just there a second ago. He's hanging out.
I know. I do not think they like the windshield wiper.
I just saw him. He's right there. He's
There he
right
is.
there. Hanging on for dear life.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here for Live Impact News. I'm Vanessa Rufus. Right off the bat, we want to start with a big update that we just got today out of CMPD. This is regarding that weekend mass shooting that unfortunately was a deadly shooting. One person died, 5 others injured. And this was in a nightlife area stretch of Uptown North College Street. And we just got an update, as I mentioned, just several moments back from CMPD. Sounds like they have 2 people in custody at this point in connection to this crime. However, they say that this investigation is far from over, and they're in fact asking folks to come forward with any new information that might be helpful with this case. So with that, let's turn to the latest CMPD update on that shooting from early yesterday morning.
Good afternoon. My name is Crystal Fletcher. I'm a lieutenant with the Public Affairs Division at the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. Thank you all for joining us here today. Deputy Chief Ryan Butler will be providing an update on the ongoing investigation into a homicide and multiple shootings that occurred in the early morning hours of July 13th in the 300 block of North College Street in our Central Division. He will share the latest details available at this time and address any questions you may have following his remarks. Deputy Chief.
Good afternoon. I appreciate everybody taking the time to come down and be with us while we're trying to update you on this very significant case. Obviously there's rightfully a lot of concern when an incident like this occurs. What I would like to reassure your viewers and your readers is that our detectives have been continuously working this case since it occurred early on Sunday morning. Our homicide detectives have been working in conjunction with our patrol divisions and with our Special Investigation Bureau detectives. I can tell you that as of today, we have made 2 arrests related to this case. The Violent Criminal Apprehension Team located a suspect earlier this morning, and this afternoon the Crime Gun Suppression Team, in conjunction with the Gastonia Police Department, took a 2nd suspect into custody. At this time, our homicide detectives are in the process of interviewing both of those suspects. That being the case, I will tell you that if you've talked to anyone on scene, if you've seen any video or camera footage from the scene, you know this was a very chaotic event. We absolutely believe that multiple people were involved, whether they be witnesses, victims, or suspects. And we again encourage anyone who is a viewer, a listener, a reader of your sites to have the opportunity to speak directly to one of our homicide detectives, and they can do so at 704-432-TIPS. If they would like to remain anonymous, we absolutely respect their privacy. They can provide information to Crime Stoppers at 704-334-1600. As I said, we believe that there are multiple parties involved in this incident. So although we are encouraged by the progress of the case, the investigation is by no means complete. I think you will continue to see a strong police presence, although I would reinforce to you that there is nowhere you can go in this city on a Friday or a Saturday night where you would encounter more police officers per city block than you will in Uptown Charlotte. The night of this incident, we had 9 officers working off duty in that block, between the officers who were working off duty for the clubs on College Street, or the sergeant and the officers that were working off duty at 7th Street Station parking deck. If you've talked to people on scene or had a chance to review any of the footage from the scene, you can see officers immediately running to the scene after the incident occurred. And you can see some of the individuals who we believe are suspects in the case running past cars with their blue lights on. That is how brazen, how callous this is. If there are people that reach out to you that say that they don't tolerate this, that they will not accept this behavior, I don't think anybody accepts this behavior. I don't accept this behavior. I can assure you that none of our officers or detectives do. I want the community to be angry about this, because this is not something that anybody should have to tolerate. And that's why it's so important that we continue to work together. I mean, every time that I come and speak to you about an incident, I stress the fact that it is the collaboration between us, between the community, between our partners in the media to document these incidents, to share information, and to be able to exchange information with each other so that we know what's going on, and so that that person who's listening or watching TV while they eat dinner or get up in the morning, eat breakfast, and saw something or heard something from a friend who was out there that they think that doesn't matter, a detective doesn't need to know about that. I contend that that small piece of information could be the piece of information that we need to tie other information or other evidence that we have together. You know, you if you were on the scene, saw our crime scene investigators out there, I can tell you that our laboratory is working priority on the evidence. We had over 7 guns that were seized on scene. Those are being processed by our biology section. That ballistic evidence will be going to our NIBIN section for ballistics testing and matching. You know, everything that we do as a team, as a community, goes towards the ultimate goal, which is seeking justice for our victims and establishing the type of safety and security that we all want in the city that we enjoy. I'll go ahead and take your questions.
So, Deputy Chief, let me ask you about Encore and QC Social. Even city councilman, I don't know if you've seen it, but one of the city councilmen said he planned to ask specifically about QC Social and Encore, and if there are any specific issues with those clubs. Is there enough? I know you said there were 9 off duty, but is there enough presence down there that could keep some of these issues from happening?
You know, I'll tell you that police presence is something that it's in the eye of the beholder. I mean, you can talk to one resident of the city who loves seeing 19 police officers standing in front of wherever they are, and you talk to somebody else that says, well, why are there so many police here? If there's not a problem, why are there so many police? You know, it's a matter of striking that balance. The other thing is that, you know, to an extent, we can have people that go to a location that are not breaking the law until they exercise very poor judgment and are breaking the law. I mean, if you have somebody who legally possesses a firearm and that firearm's in their car and they drive to Uptown, if they can legally possess that firearm and it's not concealed, are they breaking the law? No. But if they decide to resolve a conflict with somebody with that firearm, you know, then it becomes an issue. And we can't police to the extent that we want to restrict people's ability to exercise lawful, courteous judgment, but it's a matter of us working with the people who live in that area, working with city government, working with local business owners to strike a security profile that they find acceptable. I can tell you that the ABC detectives that we have in special investigations were there that night conducting inspections of those businesses. In regard to the presence, 9 officers in one city block is probably an above average number. Now, obviously, the outcome is something that none of us are going to tolerate. So are there changes that need to be made? Yes. And so that's when we look into a variety of things regarding, you know, security profile of the businesses, the security practices that they have in place for their patrons, you know, the traffic flow where patrons and cars go in the area. And that doesn't just go for that location. That goes for any location where, you know, people are coming to enjoy themselves on a Friday or Saturday night, whether that be uptown, whether that be down on South End, whether that be out on the west side, people going to a club. We want people to be able to lawfully and courteously enjoy themselves.
But if I can follow up on that, were the issues we saw this weekend, the shootings, that, especially the deadly, have you all been able to figure out if they're specifically tied to either one of those venues I mentioned?
Are you asking if they're tied to the business practices, or were they patrons?
Were they patrons, the people that were involved in?
So this is still early in the process. I'm not going to commit to they were patrons or they weren't patrons, because I was not there. And as I said, we have 2 people in custody who we know were in the vicinity of those businesses, and they're being interviewed by homicide detectives. Now, I can't at this point right now commit to you they were inside the business or they were at another location walking to the area. And to an extent, it doesn't matter, because their behavior is not excusable. So whether they were in that business or not in that business, they came to that location, and we believe multiple people were involved in the violence that was committed. So regardless of where someone patronized early in the evening, the outcome is not acceptable. Yes, ma'am.
Jesse,
Hang on.
WCNC.
Now, do you guys have any idea as far as motive, and then, like what led up to the shooting, but also if Bryant was the intended target or if he was hit by crossfire?
So again, we have 2 individuals in custody right now. We believe that multiple people were involved in this incident, and they are in the process of being interviewed by homicide detectives.
Will you release their identities?
When we charge individuals and those individuals are transported to the sheriff's office and have been formally charged, the PIO will update with the arrestee information and with the charges we've brought.
As far as you know, was Mr. Bryant an innocent party in this, bystander?
Well, as I said, we've had homicide detectives working this case since 2 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. They haven't stopped, other than taking little breaks for rest here and there. The squad has not gone home. They have continued to investigate this case. So I'm going to ask that you give them the courtesy of allowing them to finish the investigation, because that is something that we seek in all of our homicide investigations to do, is to bring justice to the victim, to bring justice to the family and friends of any of our homicide victims. And so they have to be allowed to do their job so that we can find the truth in the incident.
Did you determine how many shots were fired or how many casings you guys found? And when you say multiple people, many people, do you have a rough estimate? 10, a dozen, 2 dozen?
No, sir, I'm not going to commit to a number. The number I'll commit to you is that we've made 2 arrests today in the case.
What about the number of shots that were fired?
I would have to verify that with PLIMS, with our evidentiary system, with a number of cartridge casings that were entered into PLIMS.
Do these people know each other? Or did they previously know each other?
So I'm going to refer you back to my last answer, which is I'm going to allow the homicide detectives to conduct the investigation, and I would ask that you give them the courtesy, Brett, of conducting the investigation before we commit to anybody's relationship with anybody else. Yes, ma'am.
You said that the scene was chaotic. Can you describe exactly what you mean by that, what officers found when they arrived?
I can tell you, based on the video I've seen, obviously it's a natural reaction when you are in the proximity to gunfire, where you would not expect going to a bar, a restaurant, or a club uptown, that people were trying to seek safety and remove themselves from what they perceived as a dangerous environment, because you can see on some of the security video firearms being discharged.
Deputy Chief, if I may follow up on something you mentioned, but not really directly, and it's speaking to concerns about safety in the corridor of like College, Caldwell, Brevard, 6th, 7th, 8th. I know, we had the shooting involving the officer that was injured. Can you speak to efforts? I know whenever we had issues, for example, with Romeo Beard, you all did kind of specific operations going out to people's homes before New Year's. You have the Blue Lights initiative. Is there anything that you're specifically doing long-term to address crime issues in that area, especially like Friday, Saturday, Sunday night?
Sure. I think you'll see, several things that you referenced. So Operation Heartbeat, which is officers utilizing their steady blue lights on their patrol cars. That effort is still in place. We started the Core 13 initiative, which is an evening utilization during shift overlap, where we have officers go to an area. It can either be a chronic or an acute crime issue, where we utilize officers there. Central Division regularly utilizes both bike and foot patrol in a variety of areas. You have a very concentrated mix of both residential and nightlife. That's a good thing, and so you're going to have people coming together. So it's a continuous evaluation of providing safety and security without overwhelming people with safety and security.
Have you all seen an uptick in the area when it comes to crimes like this, or do you feel like this is just an anomaly?
Well, I think human behavior being what it is, it's not always necessarily a driver based on the location. It's the driver based on behavior. And when you have individuals who, regardless of what the basis for the disagreement or the confrontation is, turns to a firearm, the outcome is going to be unacceptable. And that doesn't matter whether it's uptown or out in the county or in a residential neighborhood. And so whenever we have a homicide incident, that outcome is not acceptable. And we, again, will work with our business partners, our residential partners, and anybody that has information that is willing to bring that information forward to us, whether it be video or information that you have because you were there or a friend of yours was there or showed you something that they videotaped on their phone, we absolutely want to be able to have the chance to talk to you. And that's where, if somebody would like to speak directly to a homicide detective, they can call us at 704-432-TIPS, or if somebody has information that they'd like to share anonymously, they can share it with Crime Stoppers at 704-334-1600. That is the update that we have for right now. I do appreciate everybody coming out, and as additional developments occur, we will get that information out through the PIO. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. This concludes our media availability. If you need the spelling of Deputy Chief's name, it's R.
We definitely will have more on this case as we get more information from CMPD, but there you have it, the latest information from police regarding this past weekend's shooting in Uptown, which unfortunately took one life. I wanted to point out here, bottom right corner of your screen, we do have the radar up for you. We're going to leave it up as long as we can. We are seeing some storm activity in our area, and if we get anything that's going to be big and breaking on the weather front, of course, we'll be bringing in our weather impact team to talk about that. But here where we are in the Charlotte area, we're actually hearing right outside our studios the thunder. So be careful, folks, when thunder roars go indoors, of course. We want to talk about a national headline that is really breaking hearts when you think about the situation here involving the fire in Massachusetts in Fall River. This is in that assisted living facility. We talked about this earlier this evening, but we got an update from authorities regarding the response to that and some of the concerns that we saw fire officials having with staffing in response. If you are just catching up on this headline, this happened in an overnight period. Folks were trapped inside this assisted living facility. 9 people died, 30 people were hurt, and we heard about folks being called off from off duty, police officers who were jumping in to try to help and save folks. So really dire situation. Let's listen in on this entire briefing here from fire officials on the response and what we know about the fire.
Minutes.
Yep.
Why did you come here, and what did you do as soon as you got here?
I heard the call, and I knew the address, and they had an active fire inside of an assisted living, and they were already calling out multiple rescues. I was supposed to be working today, so I already had my stuff ready, and I just responded here. When I got here, what I saw was everyone was overwhelmed, split between rescuing those that they could see and searching for those they couldn't see. And then there were crews that were actively engaged in fire suppression. The amount of people that we had, if you take 60 people, we have 30 firefighters on scene. That's 2 residents per firefighter. And we have to break the windows, ladder them, climb in, extricate them. Many of the people were non-ambulatory or unconscious. So each one took in the air conditioners that were that screwed into the windows that we couldn't get out. Each one of them took a significant amount of time to extricate them from the building itself. And like I said, 40 minutes, and we were still actively finding victims in an active scene. And that was due largely to manpower.
What was it like to be inside that building, and did you ever think twice about going in?
Well, seeing as I didn't have any turnout gear and I didn't have any breathing apparatus, it was smoky. For quite a few of us that went in there that didn't have anything, and basically you do what you have to do. I didn't have time to go get the stuff. We didn't have any extra stuff, so we did what we had to do.
And then did you realize at a certain point, I have to get out? The smoke was just too much?
Yeah. Besides, the chief told us, you've eaten enough smoke. Get out. Get out. Both us, me, Captain O'Regan, quite a few other guys here, all the same. We all ate the same amount of smoke, and we all did the same amount of stuff. None of us stood out as being more heroic than the others. We all did the best we could to try to effectuate a positive outcome at this scene.
How are you doing today?
A little hoarse, a little tired, but I'm okay. My main concern is with the guys here that have to experience this, the largest loss of life in Massachusetts in 40 years, and the families and the victims. I'm more concerned about them than I am myself.
Were any of you among the injured firefighters? And have you been in contact with any of those who have been injured?
I believe they were all minor injuries. One of our members came by this morning. He got 12 stitches to his hand from a glass window when he was trying to extricate it, and a lot of smoke inhalation.
Are you able to say who called 911 and when that call came in?
That I wouldn't know.
What was it, the first people that got here, what time did they get here?
That would be up to the chief. I'm not specific on times and stuff. I know what time I got here.
Can you walk through again the issue with the staffing? Like how many folks were here initially, and then I guess what ideally that number would be?
We had actually the entire city. Every piece of apparatus I believe was here.
If this was the city of Fall River, if this was the city of New Bedford, or Boston, or Worcester, with 4 firefighters, there would have been 40 total firefighters initially on scene, before any off-duty firefighters showed up. There were only 32. Those additional 8 firefighters, in my opinion, would have affected rescues, would have saved lives, and I don't think I'm overstating that probably 5 more people could have lived had those 8 firefighters been on scene, been able to effect rescues. If they're here initially on the apparatus where it should be staffed to.
Eventually, more folks did show up with patrol aids that were in.
They did, but as you know, time matters, and as the exposure to the smoke, people become unconscious, the CO takes over their bodies, and unfortunately they die if we don't get to them in time. And that's why time matters. That's why we have to have adequate staffing on the apparatus responding to these fires.
How long have you been warning the city about staffing issues?
I believe this is something going on for decades.
It's been a pressing issue for many decades. Closures of companies, cutting back on staffing, reducing staffing. It's a slow, gradual process where the city balances the budget on public safety, and we find it completely unacceptable. I would ask the mayor, to what cost a human life? To what cost 9?
Now, what changes do you think you need to see to increase the staffing, whether it's recruitment, budgeting, benefits? What do you think the city could do to help fix that problem?
Find the money. Government is awfully good at wasting money on nonsensical projects when they should be putting it towards life safety. Again, what price does a life have?
The mayor can decide tonight to staff this city properly. He can order the chief tonight to put 4 firefighters on every piece of apparatus in the city, and it would be done.
Can we ask you a follow-up question? Do you mind? Have you had a chance to process last night, this morning? How you doing?
I feel pretty sick all day, so, and I'm working overtime tonight, so I'll hydrate a little and back at it.
And your fellow firefighters, can you talk a little bit about working together out here and what you guys did working together since you were out here?
Yeah, when I got here, these guys had done an unbelievable amount of work, just a tremendous amount of work, and these guys were really beat up, and they were making all kinds of rescues out windows, coming down stairways, so they had done such an unbelievable amount of work when I got here. That's why most of them were just completely spent. I get all the credit in the world for the guys that showed up and just saw this horrific scene. Like, it must have been awful.
You mentioned some of the challenges, from the air conditioners to the fact people that you were dealing with here. So you had to overcome a lot than maybe just a normal fire.
Yeah, the ladder they put up, I had to push the air conditioner in, take the window out, and then just kind of dive in. But there were a lot of air conditioners, and the window was kind of screwed in.
At the mobility of people, that, were many people you mentioned that there was a challenge of, making sure that people could get out of the building safely, them being able to walk on their own. I know nurses will say that, their biggest fear is a fire at an assisted living facility or a nursing home.
There's a lot of disabled people here. By the time I showed up, anybody that was able-bodied that was already out. The people that I came across in the apartments that I were on the floor, completely covered with soot and unconscious.
Are you guys able to say whether the sprinklers were going off when you entered the building?
I don't know. I'm not going to comment anything that's an investigation worthy kind of.
Assuming that you probably can't answer this, but any indication of what started the fire?
I can't even venture a guess.
You know where?
I came in, I went to the beach side of the building, And that's kind of where I kind of check things out later, but that's way out of my scope.
Can you say and spell your name?
Frank, F-R-A-N-K, O'Regan, O-R-E-G-A-N.
In the position of the fire department?
I'm the captain of the heavy rescue company for another 12 days or something like that. And I'm retiring.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So one more piece I want to identify. The National Institute of Standards and Technology studied staffing of fire companies, and they showed that the difference between staffing a fire company with 3 firefighters versus 4 firefighters was a difference of 25% in efficiency of achieving the task they were assigned. So that's a reduction in time, that's a reduction in ability to rescue people, and that's what we saw here last night. That's why we want this problem in Fall River fixed by the mayor.
We've seen a lot of community outpour today in terms of clothing drives, food drives, things like that. Is there anything that the community can do to help all of you, whether it's, advocating for that staffing?
Yeah, I would say call the mayor and tell him to staff the city properly. And say a prayer for those people that died last night. Thank you.
We will definitely keep you updated as more information comes in on this fire in Fall River, Massachusetts. We will, of course, remind you, if you're just joining us here in Live Impact News, as you see this 3-box and you start to see additional feeds that will kind of bring on the side or kind of in our mini boxes, we are keeping an eye on some weather moving through the Charlotte area. So radar's looking pretty active. You can see the interstate camera there, 77. Things are kind of jamming up a bit as there is some pretty notable rainfall. Roadways are going to be slick. If you know someone's heading out in the next couple of minutes or you yourself plan to head out, make sure that you are giving yourself extra time and being careful, slowing it down. You have your headlights on, if you've got your wipers going wherever you're driving. It will keep you posted for sure if we see anything big and breaking on the weather front with our weather impact team. We want to talk about now, meantime, about this update that we saw from Republicans regarding the 1-year mark since the assassination attempt on President Trump at that political rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. There was a report that was released over the weekend talking about the response and potential communication issues that might have led or contributed to vulnerabilities, if you will, in that situation. And so we heard Republicans coming together just this afternoon to share a message about what they said needs to change on the political front when it comes to keeping folks who are serving in office safe.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. Yesterday, July 13th, marked 1 year since the tragedy that struck my hometown in Butler, Pennsylvania, when a gunman nearly assassinated President Trump. Tragically, he took the life of Corey Compatore and seriously wounded David Dutch and James Copenhaver. Yesterday, I returned to the Butler Farm Showgrounds, where I was with the president a year ago. I met with the Compatore family during a celebration of Corey's life. They are incredibly strong, and I know all of us on stage continue to send our thoughts and prayers to them as we seek more answers about what actually happened that day. Now, we're here today to highlight new resolution H.R. 571, which formally recognized the events of 2014 and July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania. The resolution also condemns the rise in political violence we have seen across our nation over the last year. From the assassination attempts against President Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania and West Palm Beach, Florida, to the attacks against Governor Josh Shapiro in April, and to the deadly attacks on the Minnesota state lawmakers just last month. Let's be clear. We must stand up together to oppose violence against our nation's leaders all across each party. And I want to thank my co-lead on the resolution, RSC Chairman August Pfluger from Texas. When we talk about this, though, we can have as many resolutions as we want to bring it forward. And I've heard person after person, politician after politician get up and say, I am absolutely appalled by the violence that's taking place in this country today. And we've got to stop using that type of language. And with 24 hours, they're out talking again about who should not be sitting in certain offices. So it's one thing to have a resolution. It's one thing to be resolved, the fact we're not going to keep talking like this. When I'm asking all our everybody that's in the Congress, everybody that's in elected office, please watch what you say. Don't start off saying we should never do this, and then within 24 hours go out and make statements again that incite people. That's a false lead. It's a false premise. Our resolution is an attempt to get people to speak the way they should speak. In America, the way we settle things is by votes. So it's my pleasure to be with all these people behind me today because they're all feeling the same way. And I'm going to introduce Dan Muser now. Dan and I sat beside each other in Butler July 13th last year and watched as the assassination attempt took place. I got to tell you, at first, nobody knew what was happening. It sounded like somebody was shooting off firecrackers. And then when we saw the president go down, we knew exactly what happened. We did not know that Corey Compatore had been seriously wounded and was going to die. We did not know that two other gentlemen were seriously wounded and are still recovering from those wounds. But today we are making an effort to make sure that we start speaking the right way in America. Mr. Muser.
Thank you, Mike.
You got it, brother. Appreciate you.
Well said, Representative Mike Kelly, my good friend from Pennsylvania. As he stated, I was at Butler on the July 13th, and we were there in October when our president insisted on going back. He asked me, what do you think about me going back? And I said, Mr. President, I advise against it. I was not supportive. I was more concerned about his safety. But his level of courage is, well, boundless. When the president was hit on July 13th, and we all couldn't help but really think the worst. But that certainly changed, as we all saw. At the moment, he lifted up security agents on his back, put his fist up, said, fight, 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 wiping blood from his face. And in so doing, he lifted everybody in that arena up, at the rally up. They began the chant of USA, USA. And I think he rose the entire nation up. And I think we saw that on the following November 5th. But the rhetoric in politics is out of control, right? I recently met with members of the Indivisible group up in my district, insisting I show up. Well, we had an hour meeting. I let it go to an hour and 40 minutes. But right at the very end, they said, one of them said, you know, you're a Nazi, and so is President Trump. Okay? Nazi, all right? We know what the Nazis did. When people are out there making such comments and elected officials, you know, some people believe them. They actually think that you might be that, and that hate speak turns into violence. Just this weekend, Vice President J.D. Vance and his family are at Disney World, cursed at, all kinds of foul language thrown at them. And Governor Newsom has to put something out saying, did you enjoy your time at Disney World? Okay? Governor Newsom is sick to do something like that and to act that way. And how about the ICE agents being demonized and attacked for doing their jobs? And elected officials are out there cheering it on. So there are too many Democrats, frankly, that are tolerating this, in fact, encouraging it. Not all by any means. My friends that are Democrats condemn it as well. But there's too many falsehoods. And we got a governor in Pennsylvania that does nothing but spew falsehoods. And again, people believe him, how certain measures are being taken that we're taking food out of hungry Pennsylvanians' mouths. Nothing could be further from the truth. And Brooke Rollins came up to Pennsylvania and pointed out the truth. So we have this resolution. It's about hate speech, because hate speech leads to violence. It's dangerous. We also are seeing a high level of a surge in anti-Semitic rhetoric. I mean, for crying out loud, I put out a post recently on Facebook, something positive about Israel. I literally got hundreds of basically threats and all kinds of other hate messages. So, look, we're not going to stop it all, but this resolution is about calling for an end to hateful rhetoric. It is about a resolution that solemnly making, answering recognizing the one-year anniversary of the attack on President Donald J. Trump. It honors Corey Compertor, who died shielding his family, and David Dutch and James Comperhaver, who are injured. And it also brings out the governor I just mentioned, Josh Shapiro, and some others that had we had our governor residence attacked. Okay, all of these things need to be condemned, and that's what this resolution is about. And I just applaud my good friend August Pfluger and my great friend Mike Kelly for setting all this up. Thank you very much. Now I have the pleasure of introducing Congresswoman Laurel Lee from the great state of Florida.
Thank you. 1 year ago, our nation witnessed a horrific act of violence, the attempted assassination of President Donald J. Trump. It was an attack on our president, on the families that were gathered there to hear him speak, and on the institutions that hold our democracy together. As a member of the bipartisan task force on the assassination attempt, I joined my colleagues to ask the hard questions. How did this happen, and what can we do to make sure that it never happens again? Our final report laid out clear recommendations, and since then, Congress has acted, improving threat detection systems, strengthening agency coordination.
Folks, we'll get back to this update just as quickly as we can. Meantime, we wanted to break in with some brand new information into the Live Impact News studio and a story we've been following for you throughout the afternoon and throughout the evening. It was that deadly crash that was reported in Gastonia at the intersection of Churchill Drive and East Garrison Boulevard. This caused some closures for a while in that area. We just got an update from Gastonia Police just moments ago. This is the information we're getting. We have apparently here now a suspect that's been charged, and we're also learning more about the person who was unfortunately killed in this situation. So police tell us here they believe 30-year-old Robert Johnson was driving a vehicle on East Garrison that hit and killed 70-year-old James Harris of Gastonia as Harris was trying to cross the roadway. So once again, 30-year-old Robert Johnson now facing charges. Police believe he hit and killed 70-year-old James Harris as Harris was trying to cross the road. Looks like Johnson is facing several charges now. He has been arrested, according to police, charged with second-degree murder, DWI, aggravated felony death, and failing to stop at a steady red light. So that is the very latest on that crash. Once again, from this afternoon around noontime, East Garrison and Churchill Drive. As we get more information, we'll get back with you with that information. But meantime, we'll turn back to the briefing in progress. Once again, Republican lawmakers discussing political changes they say they'd like to see in light of this report released over the weekend on the one-year anniversary of the assassination attempt on President Trump.
It's the heroism that saved others. But this resolution is more than a remembrance. It is a call to action. Threats and attacks, whether against the president, a judge, a member of Congress, or ICE agents, are unacceptable. And to those who would commit these types of acts of violence, know this: the full force of federal law enforcement will find you, will stop you, and will hold you accountable under law. Political violence has no place in America, and we must do everything in our power together to ensure that it never happens again. It is my pleasure to introduce my friend and colleague from the state of Texas, Representative Brandon Gill.
Thank you, Laurel, and thank you all for being here. It was just a year ago yesterday that President Trump was in a rural Pennsylvania field, bucolic area, beautiful part of this country, when a deranged gunman tried to murder him. At the time, there were thousands of his supporters in the field looking for a message of hope from the president, a message that the forgotten Americans in this country will no longer be forgotten, that the people who have been ravaged by globalism and mass migration and fentanyl will have a champion in Washington. And meanwhile, leftists on the other side of the aisle were slandering that same then presidential candidate, saying that he is a threat to democracy, that he's a wannabe dictator, that he is literally Hitler, in their words. And some people on their side of the aisle take those words at face value, and they tried to assassinate him. Political violence has absolutely no place in this country, but unfortunately, this kind of rhetoric has continued. We hear our colleagues on the other side of the aisle demonizing the brave men and women who serve in ICE and in immigration facilities, saying that what they are doing is similar to the secret police, that they are being compared to the Gestapo. This is rhetoric that is not only deranged and wrong, but it has no place in a functioning democratic system. So we on this side of the aisle, and we hope that others will join us, reject this rhetoric. We reject political violence in all its forms. And we pray for this country and for its leaders and for our president, for their safety and for their well-being. So with that said, thank you all for being here, and I'd like to introduce the great Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, and I'm grateful to stand up here with my colleagues. We've all joined together to denounce hate speech, political hate speech that has deadly consequences. A year ago, the world was outraged after they saw President Trump shot at the rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, and we still mourn the life of Corey Compertor and pray for his family as well as the other victims that were shot. However, this is just another type of violence that goes on and on and on, whether it's state legislators in Minnesota, Governor Shapiro in Pennsylvania, or even me being one of the biggest targets of death threats in Congress, as well as my colleagues standing here with me. I'll receive them. This is a very serious situation, and it happens in many ways. It happens in the headlines. It happens in news clips. It happens in social media posts. It happens in campaign literature and emails. And it happens in rhetoric going across the aisle between Republicans and Democrats. There is no place for political violence, and the people that suffer the most are people like Corey Compertor and his family. It's also a major strain on our Capitol Police, and if you talk to Capitol Police, I encourage you, press, to talk to them. They are dealing with a massive amount of death threats for members of Congress, and they have limited resources. We would love to see their resources used here at the Capitol for visitors and safety for everyone. However, they are constantly having to investigate death threats that come for me and other members of Congress. Over the break, I spent time talking with the FBI about someone that delivered a syringe in my mailbox, and talked with them about other cases. And there's been multiple people convicted for pleading guilty to planning to kill me. But this goes across the aisle on both ways, and I think I'm really grateful to be standing here with my colleagues that are saying enough of this. And I'd also, I can't go without saying that God saved President Trump's life in Butler, Pennsylvania. God saved him, and he knows it, and he says it frequently all the time, and the American people know it. And we're very grateful for that. So with that, I'd like to introduce my colleague from Georgia, Representative Mike Collins.
Thank you, Congresswoman Greene. And you know, it has been 1 year since they tried to kill our president. And I want to take just a quick moment to focus on what I call consequences and make two quick points. You know, the culture of lawlessness and violence, this didn't just start last year. Y'all, this started under the Obama administration when they decided to illegally investigate conservative groups, when they were out there demonizing Republicans who just simply wanted to follow the Constitution and make our country better. Then you fast forward to the Biden administration, who they put this on steroids. and actually allowed the public to take part in this game. Example, Summer of Love, where rioters were out there burning police stations, assaulting officers, taking over our cities, where they were advocating to defund the men and women in blue who protect us. And they didn't just encourage it, y'all. They promoted it. Hey, they even paid for their bail. The other thing I want to make a point is, and I think Representative Green hit the nail on the head, y'all, we got a morality problem in this country. There's no value to the sanctity of life anymore. Socialist, woke politicians, they want to have people to look to the government for every answer they need. That's not what we don't look to the government. We're supposed to look towards God for our answers. What happened in Butler? That's an example of the consequences of this Democrat rhetoric. Well, you know what? I thank the good Lord for protecting President Trump. And I pray that we get back to the foundations of our country. With that, I'd like to call up Max Miller from the great state of Ohio. Thank you.
Thanks. It's great to be with all of you this afternoon. On Saturday, I woke up, and the first thing that I did is I called President Trump. Because I remember on that day just a year ago, I had called him that morning for a discussion right before he went to that rally, and it was very sobering for me. And he said, you know, hey, Maxie, how's it going? I said, going well, Mr. President. He just said, can I help you? I just said, no. I said, thank you. Thank you for fighting, and thank you for being here, because on that day, that could have altered the trajectory of this entire country of where we are. President Trump is our 47th president. If that gentleman would have been successful, I don't know where we would have been today. And honestly, I don't care, because he's still standing and he is our president. And when you talk about political violence throughout this country and rhetoric and what it ensues, I know all of my colleagues have experienced it. I myself, just a few weeks ago, got ran off the road because some individual wanted to get my attention, and he couldn't, and he decided to use his vehicle as a weapon. This legislation should be bipartisan in its nature, and it should be pushed through without question. And enough is enough. If you have an issue with your city councilman, your mayor, your legislator, your governor, your senator, call them and set up a meeting. And if they're not, hold them accountable, because I can tell you that we answer phone calls and emails and messages from our office every single day that we are here and not here, because that is our job as a representative for each and every single one of our districts. But what should not be forgotten is what could have happened on that day and where we would have been. And thank God President Trump is here. Thank God he is addressing political violence. But I'm sick of it. I myself have experienced it. My family has now been put, right in harm's way. And enough is enough. And it's not just on members of Congress. It's also on our constituents with decorum and just to behave with respect. Yes, we do set an example for the American people to see. But it's not just on us to carry out that example. It's for everyone within our districts who is a loving father, mother, brother, sister, grandmother, grandfather, you name it, cousin, uncle. It is on all of us as a community to come together and just put your weapons down and say enough is enough and just politely disagree over political rhetoric, because I can tell you one thing. It wasn't worth it for that gentleman who tried to take out President Trump, and it wasn't worth it for that gentleman who tried to run me off the road. Consequences have actions, and you will see swift action being taken against anybody who harms any publicly elected official or any constituent. So thank you very much. It's my honor to introduce a great Texan, Roger Williams.
1 year ago, as we've talked about, a violent and deranged terrorist set out to change the course of American history by attempting to assassinate President Trump. God spared his life for a reason. Moments after bullets intended to kill him miraculously grazed his ear, President Trump stood in command of the American people to fight, fight, fight. A renewed spirit of American strength and determination was unleashed that day. Now more than ever, we must work to uphold the values that this country is built on as we usher in the golden age of national security, economic prosperity, transparency, and peace through strength. President Trump has put everything on the line. He's put his name, his freedom, his legacy, because he believes in America. He works tirelessly every single day to put the American people first. Let me be clear, political violence, as we've talked about, has no place in our country. Evil will not prevail. We are one nation under God, and let us honor the victims that fateful day by restoring an American legacy that future generations are proud of. Now, in my lifetime, there's three things that come to mind as I stood up here. I was one of the last people to shake the hands of John Kennedy on November 22nd, 1963, as a 15-year-old. I shook his hand at 10:46 in the morning. At 12:46, he was assassinated. I remember that like it was yesterday. Rhetoric brought that to be. I also remember the baseball shooting. Some of you may remember that. Many of us, our lives were changed that day because of rhetoric. And I remember that day, everybody wanted to pray for us and offer thanks or offer their prayers. But it wasn't 24 hours later, and Mike, you touched on this. 24 hours later, we were back to where enemies were enemies. And I remember my daughters, 2 daughters, went to the mailbox several months ago now, and opened up 2 letters, each one addressed to them, and had urine, blood, and feces in the envelopes, and it said, "This will be on your father's tombstone." That's tough stuff. It's got to stop. Mike Kelly, Pfluger, and the rest of us believe now is the time to make that happen. So let's keep America great. Let's again pray for President Trump, pray for his safety, and all my colleagues' safety. In God we trust.
Thank you, Mike and August, for having this event today to just remind us all that, you know, despite what happened a year ago to President Trump, and I believe that the Lord spared President Trump's life in that field there in Butler, Pennsylvania, but in spite of that, he remained in the presidential race. He carried on because of his love for our country and the encouragement of the American people. Sadly, we have reached a point in political discourse in this country where President Trump and every politician must have the courage to speak our political beliefs while knowing that at any point our lives can be in danger. Just like we saw in Minnesota, just like Congressman Miller mentioned, I too was met on an airplane, met by the police because there was a deranged man who was a former San Francisco police officer that was in Fort Wayne, Indiana, looking for me. And I know that every one of us probably have a story similar to that. And I remember Congressman Kelly back in 2010, during the Tea Party election. Passions were high, but we didn't see the hate speech and the political violence that we see today. We have got to stop it on both sides. In fact, I know every one of us up here would always condemn anybody on our side of the aisle that was performing a political any political violence, any sort of hate speech, because we will not tolerate it from either side of the aisle. And I believe that the left needs to do the same thing, that they need to condemn political violence. They need to condemn hate speech just as much as what we do. But to them, their side continues to behave differently. And heaven forbid that it happens from either side. But we continue to see it coming from the left side of the aisle. But I tell you what, as Americans, we have a great opportunity as we elect our leaders. We need to continue to make sure that we as leaders are responsible in our rhetoric. But I just appreciate President Trump standing up, even though he was almost killed that day, that he continued to fight for Americans and standing for not only our democracy, but for our Constitution and our great republic. So Mike, thank you for leading this today, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you.
So you've heard from us. I want to share something with you that has nothing to do with a political entity. I was at a celebration of life with the Comptor family yesterday. Just for a moment, step out of whom you are and think about them. On the morning, Corey, his wife Helen, his 2 daughters were so excited to be able to travel a short distance to the Butler Farm Show to see President Trump speak. This was Corey's idol. This was Helen's idol. This was the girls' idol. They just couldn't wait to get to Butler to see President Trump. The 4 of them get in their car. They make their way over. It's like 97 degrees that day, okay? So it's not pleasant. It's a warm day. And what was even warmer was the crowd that was there to greet our president. And what I want you to think about, especially of those of you who've lost somebody, a father, a mother, 2 daughters, go to an event. It's not supposed to be an event about anger. It's not about an event anything other than they're going to see their favorite president. They actually were not sitting in the seats that they were assigned. There was an opening at the top that they went up to. Shots rang out. Corey Compatore's first reaction was to get his wife and his daughters down so he could be over the top of them. What they didn't realize was that Corey had already been shot. That day is a day that lives in their memories. It's in their sleep. It's in their waking hours. This has nothing to do with politics. This has to do with life. And I think we've become too casual about what life is and what life isn't. If every single life is precious, then we should not be having this discussion today. But I want you to think about that family leaving their home, a volunteer fireman who spent his whole life running to danger to save others, who took his wife and daughters to an event to see somebody who they really liked and they wanted to listen to. 4 people in a car drive to the Butler Farm Showgrounds. That evening, Helen and the 2 daughters go home. Corey's been killed. Helen has lost her husband. His daughters have lost their father.
Folks, we'll get back to this briefing just as soon as we can. We've got a new feed coming into the Live Impact News studio. We want to go straight to it. Looks like we've got Congresswoman Alma Adams making some sort of address on the House floor right now. Let's listen in.
Everyone who calls our country home and breaks the American promise. The one big ugly bill is a betrayal of our country, and it's up to every single person in the United States, the ordinary people with extraordinary vision, to join us in standing against it. And we must fight back the way John Lewis did, using our voice, our actions, and our communities to right wrongs and to protect those who are suffering from the injustices they face. This is the moral obligation that Congressman Lewis talked to us about, and now is the time to speak up, to act up, and yes, cut up if we have to, but let's go make some good trouble. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back. I thank the lady for yielding.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is now my pleasure to yield to the representative from North Carolina, Ms. Bonnie Watson Coleman. Sorry, New Jersey. New Jersey.
I want to thank the gentlelady for yielding me some time. Wherever community is interrupted by evil or hatred, by greed, by the lust for power, it is the moral responsibility of people of goodwill to respond. John Lewis wrote those words over 27 years ago. He was echoing calls for resistance to oppression passed down from our founding fathers, but it could very well have been said about today. John was calling on all of us to fight for our communities. It was a call for solidarity. It was a call to reject the corporate influence that permeates our politics and puts profits over people. Today, we're seeing the GOP pass bills that cut nutrition assistance to pay for corporate tax cuts, bills that cut funding to nursing homes to pay for billionaires' vacation homes, Republican senators with Ivy League degrees working to eliminate college loans for poor students trying to work their way into the middle class. It will take all of us to change this culture of greed and put people over politics. John Lewis was a hero of mine, not just because he raised up working-class Americans with his soaring rhetoric, but because he walked the walk. He put his body on the line because he knew that the power of the people is greater than the people in power. I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady from New Jersey, and now yield to Representative Lucy McBath, one of Congressman Lewis's delegation mates from Georgia.
Well, I want to thank my colleague, Representative McClellan from Virginia, for leading this time here on the House floor. It's pretty difficult to believe that it's actually been 5 years that have passed since the loss of our dear friend and our colleague, Congressman John Lewis. At this delicate moment in our nation's history, we draw upon the wisdom of his words and look to his legacy for strength and guidance as we carry the torch that he lit for civil rights. In his last words to the American people, John wrote, and I quote, "Ordinary people with extraordinary vision can redeem the soul of America by getting in what I call good trouble, necessary trouble. Voting and participating in the democratic process are key. Ordinary people with extraordinary vision can redeem the soul of a nation. Where else but America could one develop that sense of conviction? John Lewis knew it was true because he lived it every single day of his life. The son of sharecroppers who preached to chickens as a young boy when nobody else would listen, would go on to become known as the conscience of Congress, this body, a legislative body which once denied him his right to participate in American democracy. When John marched, Americans were moved to act with him. When he spoke, people listened. And when he participated in sit-ins, including one in this very chamber, to confront the issue of gun violence in America, he challenged each of us to join him in getting in that good and necessary trouble to raise the consciousness of the American public and lay down the heavy burdens of hate. Ordinary people with extraordinary vision. That's who John Lewis was, and it's who he calls on each of us to be, especially in this day and in this hour. We must continue to honor his legacy with unshakable determination to fight for what is right and for what is just. Because I promise you, this is exactly what the American people deserve. And I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is now my pleasure to yield to Congressman Lewis's successor, Representative Nikema Williams of Georgia's 5th.
Thank you so much. Do not get lost in a sea of despair. Be hopeful. Be optimistic. Ours is not the struggle of a day, a week, or even a month or a year. Ours is the struggle of a lifetime. When Congressman John Lewis spoke these words, he was reminding us that justice work is much longer than a moment. It's a commitment, a calling, a lifelong fight. 60 years after he put his body on the line for our freedom, our struggle continues. We're marching in our communities and fighting back in committee rooms. We do this to push back against cuts to Medicaid that will leave NICU babies without care, cuts to SNAP that will take food out of the mouths of children and seniors, cuts to education that will tell our students to dream smaller. We bring our full selves to the struggle in many ways, through early mornings in community centers and late nights on the House floor, by standing up at the mic and showing up in the margins, through town halls and negotiating in the halls of Congress, through sitting in, standing firm, and speaking out. Getting into good trouble was never a one-size-fits-all call to action, and we honor the legacy of Congressman Lewis when we all find all ways to get in the way. Y'all, this moment is not the last struggle that we will face, but we fight anyway, with hope, with intention, with determination to achieve the beloved community. This is the struggle of a lifetime, the struggle of our lifetime. With urgency and clarity and intention, we march on.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I now yield to the gentleman from Louisiana, Representative Troy Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the gentlewoman from Virginia for yielding. The path I've been committed to extends beyond the issue of race alone and beyond class as well, and gender and age and every other distinction that tends to separate us. These words from Congressman John Lewis. These words from the late, great Congressman John Lewis reminds us that the struggle for justice isn't confined to just one issue, one identity, or one community. It's a path that winds through race, class, gender, age, ability, sexual orientation, and faith. Because injustice does not discriminate, and neither should our fight to end it. Intersectionality teaches us that we must see the whole person, not just a voter, a worker, or a statistic, but a human being carrying layered experiences that public policy must protect. Civil rights cannot be carved up. They must be defended broadly, boldly, and universally. As a son of the South, and as a congressman from Louisiana, I know the dual truths of this region, the undeniable progress we've made, and the painful inequities that still persist. In the very soil where freedom once faltered, we've seen hope rise. But let's not mistake signs of change for signs of completion. Our work is far from done. From voting rights to reproductive justice, from health equity to environmental justice, from economic fairness to criminal justice reform, the fight continues. And it must be rooted in policies that recognize the full complexity of who people are. This isn't about left or right. It's about right and wrong. It's about ensuring that whether you're black, white, rich, poor, young, old, gay, straight, rural, or urban, your dignity is protected, your rights are upheld, and your government sees you. So let's walk the path that John Lewis laid for us with moral clarity, radical inclusion, and relentless love. Not just for some, but for all. That's how we protect democracy. That's how we make good trouble. That's how we build a more perfect union. I yield.
Mr. Speaker, I now yield to the representative from Maryland, Glenn Ivey.
I thank my colleague for yielding and for organizing this special hour honoring the life of the late colleague of ours, Congressman John Lewis. Congressman Lewis once said, ordinary people with extraordinary vision can redeem the soul of America by getting in what I call good trouble, necessary trouble. We need to get into good trouble now more than ever. It certainly feels like today we're in the struggle for the soul of America, a soul that desperately needs healing. In the fight to heal the soul of America in 1965, Congressman Lewis got into good trouble. The good trouble he found himself in Selma, nearly cost him his life. But from that good trouble came great progress. The Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, Medicaid, Medicare, the Fair Housing Act. Monumental achievements made possible through many years of nonviolent struggle by ordinary people with an extraordinary vision. Sadly, 60 years later, it feels like we're going backwards. Last time we were on this floor, House Republicans passed a bill to rip away health care from millions of Americans, to take food assistance away from families in need. For House Republicans and President Trump, making it harder for kids to eat so that some billionaires can pay less in taxes may count as progress. But America is better than that. To move in the right direction again, we must fight back for what we believe in, to protect the vulnerable, to assist those in need, to fight against discrimination. John Lewis serves as an inspiration for all of us during these unprecedented and difficult times for so many of our constituents. We must stay engaged, stay focused, and stay committed to the American ideals we cherish, the ideals Congressman John Lewis fought for both in this House and in Selma. To heal the soul of America again, we need to remain inspired by John Lewis and to get into good trouble again. Thank you, and I yield back.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentlewoman from California, Representative Sidney Kamlager-Duff.
Thank you to the gentlewoman from Virginia for yielding. The Congressional Black Caucus is often referred to as the conscience of the Congress, and Congressman John Lewis was our North Star. I never had the privilege of serving alongside Congressman Lewis, who's also my fraternity brother, but 5 years after his passing, his faith, his words, his story, his work inform my work. I often recall his words, "It's not about who wins. It's not even about who is right. It is about what is right." That never changes. Regardless of if our districts are cobalt blue or ruby red, every single member of Congress took an oath to do right by our constituents and to fight for policies that not only help them get by, but help them get ahead. However, Mr. Speaker, my Republican colleagues have just enacted the largest transfer of wealth from the working class to the top 1% in our nation's history, cutting essential programs and leaving many Americans poorer, sicker, and hungrier. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, they continue to turn a blind eye to our neighbors, friends, and family members who are being torn from our communities by this administration's militarized ICE. No matter who is in power, we should all agree that it is unacceptable for infants to go without formula, for toddlers to attend school on empty bellies, and for children to be handcuffed and separated from their parents. It is wrong for children battling cancer to lose access to health care or to be deported to countries they have never known. Mr. Speaker, if my colleagues on the other side of the aisle cannot put politics aside to advocate for children, then who are they truly standing up for? I'll let you all figure that one out. America is at a crossroads. Where we go from here as a nation depends on those courageous enough to stand for the most vulnerable among us rather than selling us out to the highest bidder. Mr. Speaker, as congressional Republicans stare down both paths, I urge them to remember the words of John Lewis, one of the greatest to have ever served. It is not about who wins. It is not even about who is right. It is about what is right. That never changes. May they find even a fraction of the courage that Congressman Lewis had and do right by their constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And now another one of Representative Bishop. Another one of, okay. I yield to the gentleman from Rhode Island, Gabe Amo.
Mr. Speaker, as Congressman John Lewis said, we live together in the same house. If one section of our house begins to rot, the entire structure is in danger of collapsing. This week marks 5 years since his passing, but his words are more important than ever. Congressman Lewis understood that the fate of all Americans was intertwined and that laws that hurt one hurt us all. Take the tragic action on Medicaid, for example. Just 2 weeks ago, Republicans in this very chamber passed Donald Trump's big ugly bill, which included the largest cuts to Medicaid in the program's history. Republicans slashed nearly $1 trillion from the program, leaving roughly 17 million Medicaid and Affordable Care Act recipients without health insurance. Every American, no matter where they get their health coverage, will be hurt by this law. Just like a leak in the roof of a house can cause rot that could collapse the entire structure, these cuts could bring down the entirety of our health care system. Republican cuts to Medicaid erode vital funding for hospitals in low-income and rural communities, will shutter 1 in 4 nursing homes, and cripple Americans' access to behavioral health care. It will make emergency wait room times longer, close local doctors' offices, and mean that black students, some of the least resourced, won't be able to get government-backed student loans to fund their full medical education. If Congressman Lewis were here with us in this chamber, he would be at the vanguard decrying this immoral, sinful, cruel bill. He was a key player in moving our nation closer to securing the right of health care for all, eliminating disparities in health equity, and improving access to care in his role to draft the Affordable Care Act. We must stand up as our colleagues on the other side of the aisle strip away Americans' Medicaid and hurt that legacy of the Affordable Care Act. We must, as Congressman Lewis would remind us, do the right thing, cause good trouble, and ensure that no one destroys the progress that we have made. And I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And now I yield to one of Congressman Lewis's delegation mates from Georgia, Representative Sanford Bishop.
I thank the gentlelady for yielding, and I'm honored to speak today in tribute to the life and legacy of an iconic American patriot, John Robert Lewis, our friend and colleague, who transitioned from labor to reward 5 years ago this week. John was and still is the conscience of this Congress. In his posthumous published op-ed, "Together You Can Redeem the Soul of Our Nation," John Lewis wrote, "I just had to see and feel it for myself that after many years of silent witness, the truth is still marching on." Those words speak to us today, as truth is no longer valued in our public dialogue. Lies are rampant from our public spaces in support of denying basic rights of voting, health, nutrition, opportunity, and humanity. In official attempts to rewrite and whitewash our history, lies to deny diversity, equity, and inclusion, lies to remove African American and other cultural and racial groups from public spaces, in our history books, and museums. John told us we must study and learn the lessons of history because humanity has been involved in this soul-wrenching existential struggle for a very long time. John wrote, "The truth does not change. That is why the answers worked out long ago can help you find solutions to the challenges of our time. Truth does not change," he said. "We must continue to use the truth of history to move us forward." Yes, the truth is still marching on. Lowell said, "Truth forever on the scaffold, wrong forever on the throne. Yet that scaffold sways the future, and behind the dim unknown standeth God within the shadow, keeping watch above his own." John gave his life for the truth that all men and women are entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is our duty to keep up his fight, to get into good trouble, to make that happen. I yield back.
Thank you. I now yield to the gentlewoman from New Jersey, Representative LaMonica MacGyver.
Thank you so much to the gentlewoman from Virginia. Mr. Speaker, I rise as a new voice, as a new face, as a new generation, but still living by the words, when you see something that is not right, you must say something. You must do something. Democracy is not a state, it is an act. These words, those words, the words of the late John Lewis are as relevant now as they've ever been. They ring true in a time when our democracy is threatened, in a time when politicians attempt to choose their voters instead of letting their voters choose them, in an effort to suppress the voices of the American people, and when the powerful reject accountability and oversight and come after those who stand up against cruelty. Rep. John Lewis believed that our democracy is precious and sacred. He believed that showing up and taking action has the power to create a more perfect union. He was right. His passion for peace, justice, and the true belief in America inspired generations. And today, we stand on his shoulders as we continue to fight to protect our democracy on so many fronts, and as we defend that sacred right at the heart of it, our voice, our vote. I am proud to stand beside my colleagues in this work in the battle for the soul of our democracy. I will continue, yes, Mr. Speaker, I will continue to allow the spirit of John Lewis to encourage me to act and to get into some good trouble and necessary trouble to redeem the soul of America. With that, I yield back.
I now yield to the gentleman from Alabama, Representative Shamari Figures.
Thank you. In his final op-ed, Congressman Lewis said, "You must study and learn the lessons of history because humanity has been involved in this soul-wrenching existential struggle for a very long time." Now, some may take those as just wise words from a civil rights icon. But for me, I take those words, I take that statement as a personal charge, because I now have the privilege, I have the blessing of representing not only the birthplace of the civil rights movement in Montgomery, Alabama, but also the birthplace of John Lewis, the man who often referred to himself as the boy from Troy, which is a small town in Pike County, Alabama, which is now in District 2. A district, I might add, that exists in its current format today because of the Voting Rights Act, the same very Voting Rights Act that John Lewis risked his life to see enacted. But those words in that final op-ed, to me, they are a charge to not forget where we have come from or what we have been through as a nation, but also a charge to be vigilant and to commit to ensuring that we never go back to certain days in this country's past. But that charge is becoming increasingly more important by the day. It seems that every day there's another effort to set us back to times we thought we were beyond as a nation. From watching the current administration walk back school desegregation, consent decrees, to the closing of civil rights offices across the federal government, to straight-on attacks to efforts to ensure that the playing field is balanced for everybody, regardless of what you look like. You know, it seems to me that we are forgetting where we came from as a nation, forgetting the times where people who look like me did not have the opportunity or the privilege to live in the same America as people who don't look like me. And these are not just efforts by this current administration to overtly roll back equal protections and access, but even in this very body, where just recently we passed legislation that imposes student loan borrowing caps on Americans who want to be doctors or lawyers. And those caps are less than the average cost of those degrees. Now, to some people, they may say, well, that's just race neutral. Well, those lessons of history that John Lewis was speaking of, they teach us a different lesson. They teach us that in practice, what that means is fewer black people will be able to become lawyers. Fewer black people will be able to become doctors. That means fewer opportunities. That means fewer black parents can tell their kids that they can literally be anything they want to when they grow up. They must now caveat that by saying, if we can afford it, you can be a doctor. If our credit is good enough, you may be able to be a lawyer. But that same history that clarifies what those recent actions mean, that same history tells us that no matter how dark the days may be now, no matter how dark the motives or the efforts are, no matter how dark the outcomes may be, that those spaces can never be as dark as they once were, because the light of progress made hangs forever in those spaces. The light of John Lewis hangs forever in those spaces. And so this is not a moment of complacency. We cannot afford to be complacent in this moment. We must aggressively continue the fight, as my colleagues have so eloquently laid out here tonight. We must continue the fight for justice, learning from our past and building upon the legacy of John Lewis and others, which demands that in moments like this, we stand firm, we keep the faith, and we continue the struggle. I yield back.
Mr. Speaker, I now yield to the representative from California's 12th District, Latifah Simon.
Good evening, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in honor of the late Congressman John Robert Lewis on the 5th anniversary of his passing. Congressman Lewis said in a beautiful quote, "Children holding hands, walking with the wind. This is America to me. The endless struggle to respond with decency, with dignity, and the sense of brotherhood." We are so thankful for the legacy, the long-living, forever legacy of Congressman Lewis. Before he took the oath here in this room, many of us studied his legacy as a young activist and organizer. Depth with peace and clarity. He held hands with others and walked across the bridge in Selma to meet what we know then was a violent mob who themselves swore to decency. They beat those young people that day, young people who rose up and decided that they too belonged to a democracy that they were born into, but never saw it. Their mothers never saw it. Their fathers never saw it. These young people took the mantle of peace and shone a mirror of hatred, a mirror of segregation, of degradation. And they walked away harmed, but with more clarity. Mr. Lewis was one of the leaders that day. Those who studied the theology of freedom that is so deeply embedded in all of our faith traditions know that the actions of Mr. Lewis on that bridge, on the streets, on this floor will forever live. And I want to go back before I end to that quote, "Children holding hands, walking with the wind." Those children, America's children, need us now more than ever. Children will go back to school in 6 weeks, and because of what has been done on this Hill, this week they will not have school lunches. We will diminish the Department of Education. The Office of Civil Rights within the Department of Education was responsible for making sure that those children, disabled children, children who had been pushed to the side, had national standards so that they too could be centered in the classroom with dignity and support. We are tearing those wins apart. As children go hungry, as they are pushed to the side in their classrooms, as we continue to pay teachers less than what they are worth, I ask folks to do what we've learned from our dear mentor, John Lewis. Shine the light with peace and dignity upon those who put forth evil, who strike down the widow, who take food from the poor, who take the word of our God out of context, who feed the wealthy while starving the homeless. Mr. Lewis, we will forever walk in your path for justice, for liberty, and for the sake of our children who need and deserve the winds at their back. And I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I inquire as to the time remaining?
About 3.5 minutes.
About how many?
3.5 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, one of my biggest regrets is that I did not get to serve with Congressman Lewis, but I did get to meet him. He came to Richmond about a year and a half before he passed for the renaming of Arthur Ashe Boulevard. I had the opportunity to sit with him at lunch and ride with him to an exhibit at the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts in a former Confederate chapel on land that was once a Confederate veteran's home. Walking into that chapel, knowing the history that occurred there, and watching John Lewis sit and listen for the first time to the speech he gave during the Clinton impeachment, and he had tears streaming down his eyes. And the quote that sticks with me is when he asked in his booming voice, "Is this good for America? If it's good for the American people, if it's good for the institution." And that, Mr. Speaker, is the question I ask myself every day in this office. John Lewis understood, just as Dr. King did, he wasn't going to reach the promised land of that more perfect union, but he fought for it. And in his final words to us, he said, "Though I may not be there with you, I urge you to answer the highest calling of your heart and stand up for what you truly believe. If in my life I have done all that I can demonstrate that the way of peace, the way of love and nonviolence is the more excellent way, now it is your turn to let freedom ring. When historians pick up their pens and write the story of the 21st century, let them say that it was your generation who laid down the heavy burdens of hate at last, and that peace finally triumphed over violence, aggression, and war. And so I say to you, walk with the wind, brothers and sisters, and let the spirit of peace and the power of everlasting love be your guide." John Lewis handed us the baton. Are we going to pick it up? Are we going to carry on his work? The Congressional Black Caucus will make sure we do. Thank you, and I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. Does the gentlelady have a motion?
Yes. Mr. Speaker, I move to adjourn the House at this time.
The question is on the motion to adjourn. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Accordingly, the House stands adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow for morning hour debate.
Okay, folks, so there you have it. Various addresses from the Congressional Black Caucus as they remember John Lewis. And we, of course, are continuing to follow, as you can see in the bottom right corner of the screen, storms moving through the area. We still have a pretty active radar. We'll keep you posted if we hear anything on that front. Meantime, you might remember before we went to that live feed from the House, we were listening into Republicans who were making their comments following this one-year mark since the attempted assassination of President Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania at that political rally. Just a quick recap as we're jumping right in the middle of where we left off. We heard various folks here with this address speaking on their concerns with political rhetoric and violence and what it means for the country, and also folks who are serving in office right now. Let's listen in.
President Trump, and it wasn't worth it for that gentleman who tried to run me off the road. Consequences have actions, and you will see swift action being taken against anybody who harms any publicly elected official or any constituent. So thank you very much. It's my honor to introduce a great Texan, Roger Williams.
1 year ago, as we've talked about, a violent and deranged terrorist set out to change the course of American history by attempting to assassinate President Trump. God spared his life for a reason. Moments after bullets intended to kill him miraculously grazed his ear, President Trump stood in command of the American people to fight, fight, fight. A renewed spirit of American strength and determination was unleashed that day. Now more than ever, we must work to uphold the values that this country is built on as we usher in the golden age of national security, economic prosperity, transparency, and peace through strength. President Trump has put everything on the line. He's put his name, his freedom, his legacy, because he believes in America. He works tirelessly every single day to put the American people first. Let me be clear, political violence, as we've talked about, has no place in our country. Evil will not prevail. We are one nation under God, and let us honor the victims that fateful day by restoring an American legacy that future generations are proud of. Now, in my lifetime, there's three things that come to mind as I stood up here. I was one of the last people to shake the hands of John Kennedy on November 22nd, 1963, as a 15-year-old. I shook his hand at 10:46 in the morning. At 12:46, he was assassinated. I remember that like it was yesterday. Rhetoric brought that to be. I also remember the baseball shooting. Some of you may remember that. Many of us, our lives were changed that day because of rhetoric. And I remember that day, everybody wanted to pray for us and offer thanks or offer their prayers. But it wasn't 24 hours later, and Mike, you touched on this. 24 hours later, we were back to where enemies were enemies. And I remember my daughters, two daughters, went to the mailbox several months ago now, and opened up two letters, each one addressed to them, and had urine, blood, and feces in the envelopes, and it said, "This will be on your father's tombstone." That's tough stuff. It's got to stop. Mike Kelly, Pfluger, and the rest of us believe now is the time to make that happen. So let's keep America great. Let's again pray for President Trump, pray for his safety, and all my colleagues' safety. In God we trust.
Thank you, Mike and August, for having this event today to just remind us all that, despite what happened a year ago to President Trump, and I believe that the Lord spared President Trump's life in that field there in Butler, Pennsylvania, but in spite of that, he remained in the presidential race. He carried on because of his love for our country and the encouragement of the American people. Sadly, we have reached a point in political discourse in this country where President Trump and every politician must have the courage to speak our political beliefs while knowing that at any point our lives can be in danger, just like we saw in Minnesota, just like Congressman Miller mentioned. I too was met on an airplane, met by the police because there was a deranged man who was a former San Francisco police officer that was in Fort Wayne, Indiana, looking for me. And I know that every one of us probably have a story similar to that. And I remember Congressman Kelly back in 2010, during the Tea Party election. Passions were high. We didn't see the hate speech and the political violence that we see today. We have got to stop it on both sides. In fact, I know every one of us up here would always condemn anybody on our side of the aisle that was performing a political any political violence, any sort of hate speech, because we will not tolerate it from either side of the aisle. And I believe that the left needs to do the same thing, that they need to condemn political violence. They need to condemn hate speech just as much as what we do. But to them, their side continues to behave differently. And heaven forbid that it happens from either side. But we continue to see it coming from the left side of the aisle. But I tell you what, as Americans, we have a great opportunity as we elect our leaders. We need to continue to make sure that we as leaders are responsible in our rhetoric, but I just appreciate President Trump standing up, even though he was almost killed that day, that he continued to fight for Americans and standing for not only our democracy, but for our Constitution and our great republic. So Mike, thank you for leading this today, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you.
So you've heard from us. I want to share something with you. It has nothing to do with a political entity. I was at a celebration of life with the Comptor family yesterday. Just for a moment, step out of whom you are and think about them. On the morning, Corey, his wife Helen, his two daughters were so excited to be able to travel a short distance to the Butler Farm Show to see President Trump speak. This was Corey's idol. This was Helen's idol. This was the girls' idol. They just couldn't wait to get to Butler to see President Trump. They make their way over. It's like 97 degrees that day, okay? So it's not pleasant. It's a warm day. And what was even warmer was the crowd that was there to greet our president. And what I want you to think about, especially of those of you who've lost somebody, a father, a mother, two daughters, go to an event. It's not supposed to be an event about anger. It's not about an event anything other than they're going to see their favorite president. They actually were not sitting in the seats that they were assigned. There was an opening at the top that they went up to. Shots rang out. Corey Comptor's first reaction was to get his wife and his daughters down so he could be over the top of them. What they didn't realize was that Corey had already been shot. That day is a day that lives in their memories. It's in their sleep. It's in their waking hours. This has nothing to do with politics. This has to do with life. And I think we've become too casual about what life is and what life isn't. If every single life is precious, then we should not be having this discussion today. But I want you to think about that family leaving their home, a volunteer fireman who spent his whole life running to danger to save others, who took his wife and daughters to an event to see somebody who they really liked and they wanted to listen to. 4 people in a car drive to the Butler Farm Show grounds. That evening, Helen and the 2 daughters go home. Corey's been killed. Helen has lost her husband. His daughters have lost their father. Forever etched in their memory is that moment, that single moment when those shots rang out. So if you're asking yourself why these things happen, is it because maybe intentionally or unintentionally we stoke those fires? This is not a Republican issue or a Democrat issue. This is an issue actually just about human being to human being. Do we respect life? Do we respect other people? And what is it that we're trying to accomplish? Isn't it amazing that we have to have a resolution in the Congress of the United States to condemn that type of action? What happened to Comptor is horrible. And when I was with Helen yesterday, for her, it's the same day over and over and over again. For Allison and Kaylee, it's the same thing for them over and over and over again. Look, the way we speak, the way we act, the way we insinuate things, that'll continue. We can pass resolution after resolution. We can go to church on Sunday and abhor what's taking place, and we leave that church and we go out and we practice what we just condemned in our churches. I would say that the illness has far deeper roots than we know. We're going to pass this resolution. And we're going to think that in some way we were able to change the way people think and the way people act. I would just ask you all, as you live your lives, think about it. Think about it. Some of these things are said casually. Some of these things are said to get a reaction. The members behind me, the people in our Congress, the people in our homes, expect nothing less than for us to act respectful to each other and always honor life. So with that, I'm going to close. I don't know He's not there. So we can take some questions? Okay. You know, Danny and I sat beside each other. By the way, there was another person who, and I think I told you about, Mark Fogel's mother was with me, and she just wanted to meet the president. And when she talked to the president, we were standing together, and she said, Mr. President, please, please bring my son home. I miss my son. I'm staying alive so I can see him. The president told her, Ms. Fogel, I get elected, your son will be home. Mark Fogel is now home with his family. I would ask all of us to please, let's honor life in every single way. So if there's questions, please, and we're all open to listen to anything. And if you all want to say anything, I want you to say stuff. I think they were all magnificent what you said. It is about life. It is about life, and much more strongly, this political talk has got to stop. Let's talk about the value of the pieces of legislation, how we value it. If we don't like the legislation, you know, we can solve this with a vote, right? Is it there a vote yes or a vote no? It's not that complicated. I don't know why life has become so complicated. So please, anybody that wants to ask a question, please. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for the question. Some members have said that this assassination attempt a year ago kind of shone light on issues with lawmaker safety and have called for more protection for members of Congress as well as for the president. Do you think that there's anything that needs to be done in the immediate future on this, and does that include more funding for member security or anything else like that?
Yeah, I think probably all of the above, but I don't care how much funding we put into it. I don't care how much protection we have. There's always going to be a danger. I don't know if any other members want to speak on this, but I don't see that the resolution, it is what we feel in our hearts and what we think needs to be said. And I wish that a vote would solve the problem. I would hope that it goes deeper than that and it strikes a chord with people. Yeah, so I don't know how much we could fund it. Yes, yeah, come on.
Yeah, I think it has become an extremely serious issue. I've been swatted dozens of times. My family has been swatted many times themselves, and I hold some of the highest amount of death threats of members of Congress. And a man working in the voices to be by the Department of Justice.
Overwhelming vote in favor of that resolution would solve the problem. I would hope that it goes deeper than that and it strikes a chord with people. Yeah. So.
Institutionally, our U.S. Capitol Police, as a sergeant of arms, able to handle this new change of influx of threats?
I was just speaking for myself, but my colleagues, especially if they serve on appropriation or leadership, but I don't think they have enough resources right now, and I think limited, but I'm sure leadership and discussions will come up with ways to hopefully and fund members of Congress that do need protection.
Yeah. Yes. Did you have a second part to your question?
Yeah. Just another question more broadly.
Sure.
One, I'm sorry about the threats that you go through. People don't deserve to go through that. When the shooting of the president happened last year, there was calls for be dialed down. I think that we're in a cycle of partisan politics where threats just seem to keep escalating and rhetoric might dip down, but then it gets up. And you were saying that this is not a Democrat or Republican issue. So I guess one is.
Okay, folks, here on Live Impact News, we are going to pivot away from this address to another one that happened today. Governor Josh Stein is taking some time to promote Western North Carolina as a place to visit. Of course, this is all in an effort to have that community bounce back from Helene. We've heard time and time again from business leaders in the area that one of the best ways that everyone can help with Helene recovery is simply just to go visit the mountains and visit these businesses. Make sure that they have funding, income essentially flowing through the area. So with that, let's listen to Governor Josh Stein speaking on basically that messaging of how we can all pitch in to help.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lou Bly-Weiss, and I am the President and CEO of the Greater Asheville Regional Airport Authority. I have the distinct honor and pleasure to welcome Governor Josh Stein to the Asheville Regional Airport as part of his Rediscover the Unforgettable initiative for Western North Carolina. what better way than to begin at the new Asheville Regional Airport Terminal building? Governor Stein, please. Thank you, Lou. Thank you. Good. Afternoon, everyone. It is nice to be here at the Asheville Regional Airport. Lou, thanks for the introduction. Thanks for this incredible facility. It's incredibly exciting to be here. Also joined by Secretary of Commerce Lee Lilly. Lee, thank you. 2 weeks ago, we launched, along with Visit NC, our ad campaign called Rediscover the Unforgettable. Western North Carolina, as we all know, has so many incredible things to offer people, whether it's unforgettable landscapes, unforgettable adventures, unforgettable food, unforgettable crafts, unforgettable people. When folks come from all over the state, whether they come from all over the country, we want to remind the people of Western North Carolina that we are here with them as they rebuild and come back. My wife Anna, the First Lady, and I are here this week. We got up here on Friday. We're going to stay here all week, going to different communities, highlighting different activities, different restaurants, different natural amenities, which are just so special here in Western North Carolina, because we want the people of North Carolina to know, come here, you will have a fantastic time. Western North Carolina is open for business. We've been so far to Catawba Falls, Old Fort, we've been to Burnsville, Spruce Pine, the River Arts District here in Asheville, and it's been incredibly uplifting. Yes, there are places that are still working hard to come back, but so many places have their doors wide open, and it's up to us to enter those doors and bring our commerce to Western North Carolina. I'm excited about Asheville Airport because what this does is it opens up Western North Carolina to the entire country, frankly, to the entire world. This airport is the third busiest airport in North Carolina, after Raleigh and Charlotte. There is some 22,000 jobs that are created from this operation. It creates $3.9 billion of economic activity each year. 2 million visitors come through its doors on an annual basis. 6 major airlines fly here. There are nonstop flights to New York, to Washington, D.C., to Chicago, to Miami, to Denver, places far afield. So what we want is for people all across this country to know what we in North Carolina know in North Carolina, which is you can rediscover the unforgettable here in Western North Carolina by using this beautiful new terminal at Asheville Airport. Lee?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Governor. Thank you for hosting us here at the Asheville Airport. It's great to be here. This is actually my second time in the airport today. I got to use it this morning. I flew in from Charleston, and it's great to have Western North Carolina because we know how much Western North Carolina depends on travel and tourism, and that travel and tourism economy depends on the access and the opportunity that's created by this amazing airport and this brand new terminal. So we're so proud of that. Thank you, Lou, for your work on that. What we want is to help everybody around the world and around the country come back to Western North Carolina to enjoy the hiking, to enjoy the dining, to enjoy playing in the ways that we all have for a very long time and know that we will for a long time to come. Because what it's really about in this campaign, rediscovering the unforgettable, are those unforgettable memories that you'll find on your iPhone a year later or 2 years later when you're looking at your photos of your family, your friends, your loved ones at Smoky Mountain National Park or at Sierra Nevada, or doing something amazing here in Western North Carolina. So we want to remind the public, time to remember, time to rediscover the unforgettable, time to come back to Western North Carolina, because it's not just about memories, it's about fueling an economy where 50,000 small business owners across North Carolina support travel and tourism with amazing service that helps to create those great memories that bring people back. So however you want to get here, by plane, train, car, or bike, come to Western North Carolina. Thank you.
At this point, any of the three of us would be happy to take any questions.
You mentioned unforgettable people, and one of the first places you went when you first sworn in was the Old Fort, especially when those individuals in that community were getting those RV campers. What do you mean when you say unforgettable people? What walked away from you in those experiences?
Yeah, People here are exceptionally hospitable. Many people have been here a long time, and even those who have not been here a long time quickly adopted the culture. And it's about looking out for your neighbor. If your neighbor needs something, it's because they need something, and you will do everything you can possible to help them. In Old Fort, I stopped at a restaurant there, and the proprietor, that family, provided some 30,000 meals to people because they didn't have running water, they didn't have power, and they had a generator at that restaurant, and they just took care of their neighbors. And there is story after story after story just like that throughout Western North Carolina. And what that tells us is that we, the people of the state, frankly, we, the people of this country, have to be here for the people of Western North Carolina just as they have been there for themselves.
Sorry, just one more. What makes this initiative especially important to boost that tourism for an area of the state that receives so much heartache with the hurricane?
What I think that a lot of people who are not from Western North Carolina don't appreciate is how much progress has occurred since the storm. That restaurants are open, stores are open, the crafts people are putting their wares out for sale. And what we want is for people not to associate the floods, the high water mark, but to realize that water has receded and people have come back and rebuilt, and they need our business. We need to make sure that as many people can come to West North Carolina as possible so that we can have fun, spend our money. There is no better way that the people of North Carolina can do something to help people that will be more enjoyable to them than coming to Western North Carolina and having a great time. Taking a hike. Yeah, I was in, as I said, in McDowell County. I climbed the mountain, came down, and then I went to Hiller Beer in Old Fort. And it was a great time. So it's a way to help the community, but also to have a lot of fun.
And Governor, I know that we spoke to Jeffrey Burrows. I know you had the pleasure of talking to him on Saturday. He told me, as he probably told you, that the majority of the artists out there in the River Arts District rely on tourism.
That's right.
About half of them still aren't up and running. So I know he's told you that the business has come back some, but what does this extra push do to help people like Jeffrey and all the other artists he represents?
Yeah, what he told me was
So you heard it there, folks. If you're able to get up to the mountains and help the communities up there just by visiting and being a tourist, that would certainly contribute to Helene recovery. Folks, we're about to turn it over to our next hour of programming. We'll remind you we're keeping an eye on an active radar. Make sure you keep it here on WCNC Plus for the news at 11. We'll have your latest weather updates as well as your headlines.